And I think German football has a very different culture off the field than English football, and it's
Well,
one that
it's a very useful segue into the conference which I was at on Thursday and Friday of this week, the Como 50, which is 49 of global sports great leaders, and then yours truly as a totally undeserved 50th member. 50th member. But I was
it wasn't
at
50.
the
It wasn't
conference.
50 people doing a kind of Perry Como karaoke.
As it happens, no, although that would have been very entertaining. But during the conference, I did spend quite a lot of time. I was staying in the same house as a couple of the guys who run the Bundesliga, and we were having
As you
quite,
do.
yeah, we were having a really interesting conversation about the ups and the downs of the 50 plus one, and obviously it makes it quite difficult to operate these clubs and also the league itself. So the league might think this is something we want to do and logically win that argument in front of the chief executives of the clubs. The chief execs of the clubs then go back to their clubs and have to try and convince their effectively their supporters trust, really is what it is, that it's a good idea. And then very often they then come back to the next meeting and say, well, sorry, the supporters won't wear it. They don't want it. They actually want. And the long and the short of it is that German football supporters basically just want things to carry on as they are. But now why? They want things to carry on as they are because as a real football person, basically things are very good, right? Which is they've got huge full stadiums at affordable prices with competitive football, with great culture, everything that as a real football fan, everything that you might want, German football has, possibly with the exception of Bayern being a bit too dominant. And we had a bit of a talk about the
Yeah.
distribution model and how Bayern and Borussia get too much really, and it should be a little bit more equally shared, etc. But leaving that to one side, the rest of it is absolutely terrific. But what do they give up by doing that? They give up really the idea that they can compete with the Premier League clubs, with the exception of Bayern. Right, it's just not really doable. That the revenues are much lower. Why? Because the ticket prices are much lower. Why? Because the league doesn't really have any great huge amounts of money to invest in itself, isn't able to attract many global stars outside of Bayern. So the ability to sell the TV rights to overseas markets is much constrained. We spoke about the deal they've done with Mark Goldbridge to screen the games through him over here, etc. So they've basically decided we're not going to dance with the devil. We are going to keep all the things that are important to us, and we are going to accept on some level, both at league level, but also at club level, that we aren't going to have sugar daddies, that we aren't going to have people telling us that we're going to lose the things that matter most to us. We're going to keep all the things that matter most to us, and we're going to wear the consequences, right? So, when you speak to people who run Bundesliga clubs and the Bundesliga itself, there are frustrations because obviously they are ambitious people who want to do interesting, innovative things, and they are held back by the innate conservatism of the German football fans who control all these clubs. So that was one quite interesting theme that we might come back to in a moment. I'll lay out a couple of other themes, Adrian, and you can work out which ones you want to talk about. So another one of which is that the TV rights packages across football are, and in fact sport more generally, in fact other sports even more than football, but let's just talk about football for a moment, are in decline. And these have been the source of the growth of the industry, but particularly the growth in player wages. And the decline is happening, first of all in the smaller markets, but then France has been now hit very hard. And it was really interesting speaking to the fund, the private equity fund, who are the second shareholders of PSG. I was like, well, how are things going? Well, things are going great on one hand. Our plan, the PSG plan for sort of 5 years of how to move from being a Galactico side to being a more youth-based side is well ahead of project. Everything's being executed really well, but at the same time, the French league's in big problems, and that causes us a different set of issues. Italian football in big problems. Again, revenues going nowhere, going backwards, even big clubs really seeing their overall values coming down. Speaking to the chief executives of some of the very biggest Italian clubs, obviously we were in Italy, so a lot of them were there, saying, not only can we not compete with the Premier League, we've got major problems. Our stadiums are massively underdeveloped. So in terms of just being able to sort of safely stage games, in terms of match day revenues and all this type of stuff, we're miles off the pace, but we're not generating the kind of revenues that can really warrant sort of making sort of huge improvements to our stadia. Huge problem. So one of the things that was surfacing quite consistently over the 3 days was some sort of resurrected Super League, but potentially one that would be for France, Italy, and Spain. It was accepted that the English clubs are never going to come in and probably should never have been included in the first place. It was accepted that the German clubs will never go in because of their fan-owned nature. But the question was whether a French, Italian, and Spanish league at the top level could potentially really sort of punch its weight in a sort of consistent way. And then the other side of the broadcasting is the increasing global dominance of YouTube. You know, the extent to which YouTube audiences now are so vast that it's becoming an option for monetization to start moving towards YouTube and either using YouTube into your own channel or else having a membership model actually on YouTube itself, which is a way of broadening your audience and accepting the fact that these cozy media rights deals in 10 years' time are going to be long gone because the younger generation doesn't like paying subscriptions for these things. And you have to start thinking beyond that. My argument to that is always, yeah, that's fine. But don't forget that for anyone over the age of 35, they do pay for these subscriptions. And, you know, a 35, 40-year-old is going to be still paying for that for the next 40 years. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You could potentially sort of, you know, find ways of keeping both audiences happy. Anyway, those were some of the themes that we were discussing.
Wow, so many there, and we've got about 4 minutes left. So we're not going to explore all of them, are we? Out of all that, do you think then that a European Super League, perhaps without English clubs, is going to happen? Do you think it will happen?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I do because I think the struggles of those big clubs in those countries to maintain pace with the Premier League, not even even the mid-table Premier League clubs, is becoming. Do you remember last year we looked at the football rich list of the 20 richest clubs in the world, and it turned out like 11 or 12 of them were from the Premier League. You had clubs like West Ham in 15th place and that type of stuff. You know, it's so. I think it will. I think it probably should always have been those three countries, and maybe they could have brought in Benfica and Sporting Lisbon as well as being sort of vaguely contiguous. You know, you could even look at, you know, Anderlecht and Standard Liège and Bruges maybe as well. But basically, the continental landmass where people can travel relatively straightforwardly by train or by car to different destinations, I think would be a natural place for them to go. Obviously, they have historic domestic leagues which would suffer as you know, as a result. So I'm not sort of minimizing the impacts. I'm just saying that I think given the levels of distress that I'm feeling in those leagues and in those clubs, and we've discussed Barcelona before, you know, I'm just thinking that this might be something which down the track becomes a reality. I have to say, I didn't hear that at all from, you know, as I mentioned PSG. That wasn't coming from PSG at all. PSG are hugely successful. It's a different thing. But I was hearing it a bit from other reaches of that continental landmass.
Fascinating stuff, Charlie. Thank you. One of the Como 50. Who knew? Great to hear from Charlie, as always. And thanks to him for attending the launch of my book. If you do want to buy it, the book is called Where's the Money Gone? The Battle for the Soul of English Football. You don't have to read it, just buy it. It'll make a great Christmas present. You can order that from Byline Books. And just a couple of appearances relating to that. I'm going to be talking about the book at the Bewdley Festival in Worcestershire on October the 16th, and doing events as well in Newcastle and Liverpool on November the 5th and the 6th. So I'll have more details of that on our Substack. If you do head over to Where's the Money Gone? Substack, you'll get additional content